All right, I am on the phone with Niko Stathakopoulos from Scarves. Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. How's your day going?
Pretty good so far. It's a rare sunny one all of a sudden, so been enjoying it.
I know, and I've been stuck inside, so that's been a little bit fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to thank you for taking the time to chat with me today.
yeah, absolutely. No, I'm pretty excited to be on the phone.
Yeah, so just a little bit of history here. The very first time I got to hear Scarves was back at the Crocodile in April 2015 when Polaris was on tour, and I think it was Catelyn that was part of that lineup, and I've just been following you all since.
Wow, that's a really big honor because I feel like that show did not go well for us.
No!
I feel like that was the first show we played with the second lineup, like full lineup of Scarves, and I feel like it was good, but it was like the first show we played with that lineup.
Okay, well, I mean, I gotta say, like, just it hit me in the emotions real hard, so I knew I had to follow you after that. But just Nico, a little bit about you specifically. When and how did you get started in music creation?
So I grew up on the east side of, well, yeah, just like what we call the east side, basically the Bellevue Redmond area in Washington and King
Mm-hmm.
County. And there's a spot there called the Firehouse, which I basically used to go to a lot of shows of. It's a spot where bands like Fleet Foxes, Blood Brothers, and a lot of other really big bands, and I think like yeah, just kind of influential bands in the all ages music scene in general started playing. It's where bands like Fugazi would come on tour, and I used to attend there a lot when I was younger. And the staff there was really encouraging. Was like, "Hey, if you like music, make music." So yeah, I just kind of started to like get interested in it, and then basically started playing little tiny shows there back when I like knew two chords, and
Mm-hmm.
I was really into experimental music back then. So I would like basically just shuffle cards into a looper pedal. Uh, and then that didn't really get me friends, so I picked up the guitar again.
Okay, cool. So it sounds like you started out in like a rather nurturing environment then, really
Oh
encouraging
yeah,
folks.
like definitely, like that place was really incredible.
Cool. Okay, and just speaking a little bit to your vocal style, it's one of my personal favorites, by the way, just recorded vocals that I've ever heard, and it's really identifiable, right? Like when I hear a Scarves track, it's like, all right, that's Nico specifically. So I'm kind of curious as to how um, you found your voice and your style, and like maybe what that overall process looked like for you.
I guess the funny thing about that is like I just couldn't find a different one. Like that is the voice that just kind of comes out of me even when I don't think it is.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
so what's kind of funny is I like the voice. I think it's cool. I'm really happy that like it's a very distinct and unique one that people seem to respond to. But I always wanted to sound more like it's gonna sound really dorky, but like man, I wanted to be Chris Cornell growing up. I really wanted to have that like just powerhouse like Roger Daltrey acolyte sort of tone. And it's so when we were recording Empty Houses, it was kind of funny because I had been it was the first time I really like started to sing and was really trying. And I remember really going for it and like thinking I was really nailing it. And then I'd always hear for the sessions back, and it was still just me being like, "Hey guys," and like in my really like sort of high pitched weird whine that I do. And which isn't to say it's bad. It's just it is a high pitched weird whine. But it's just funny because like I would be like, I'm not talk singing. I am legitimately singing on this track, and then I would hear it back, and it'd be like, oh, I'm still talk singing. And like there's like I don't know. I just think it. I am incapable of doing anything else. um, but yeah, I guess like the artists that I listen to that really like kind of encouraged me to try to pursue that and like instead of fighting it, really lean into it more. Is I got really into the Dismemberment Plan, and there's a guy named Travis Morrissey who fronts that band, and I just think that like how he's able to use a voice that essentially like it's not so much that there's not a scale or a range to it, but there's not really a ton of timbre that it
Mm-hmm.
can experiment with. uh, I feel like I learned from him just a lot of how to like, okay, well, you're not going to be Chris Cornell, but you could be at least like theatrical with it still.
That's awesome. And like, I don't know, I think it's really cool to hear that it's not necessarily something that is like cerebral or like really thought driven, like something that you're trying to manipulate. It's just something like natural that comes out of you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, it would be cool if I had more control of it. I'd really like to. I mean, like the stuff that I'm like kind of working on now, I'd really like to be able to get a lot of other things. But I mean, I feel like my heroes maybe in some weird selfish way have started to become people like Craig Finn of the Hold Steady, who's also in that same boat where it's like, I mean, the advantage you get from it is that, and sort of this is something I think Craig Finn is one of the world's greatest at, is just like you get this ability to tell stories with it that a lot of musicians don't, because it doesn't lend itself as well to like the poetics of a lot of traditional music. It kind of like has to be narrative driven, because otherwise it's like, I don't trust this guy's voice if he's saying poetry. It kind of sounds awkward, but if he's just telling a story, it's like, yeah, that makes sense.
It's funny that you mentioned that. Like the storytelling aspect of your songs is something that I definitely wanted to touch on today too. But I think you fed me slash maybe us, if anyone listens to this thing, just kind of like a handful of new names to look into as well within music.
Oh yeah, I mean, like honestly, if you listen to a record called Separation Sunday by the Hold Steady, you'll be like, oh, I get it. You're like,
Okay.
it'll be very, or even the December. Like if you mix the lyrics of Separation Sunday with the music of Emergency and I by the Dismemberment Plan, you'll be like, oh yeah, that's why. Just all like that's the interview. You'll be like that's why.
Okay, cool. I'll keep that in mind for sure when I give those a spin. So, I mean, like, I think a great place to start is the band name, right? Every band name has some sort of story, even if there is no story. So how do we come up with Scarves?
It's I feel like it's gonna be disappointing, honestly. Essentially, we had been a band for about 3 or 4 months before um, we became Scarves, and essentially it was me, a guy named Marshall Verdos, who was in Mount St. Helens Vietnam band, and a guy named David Price, who was in Natalie Portman Shaved Head,
Right.
which are two great band names. You know, like I mean, I know that Natalie Portman Shaved Head is very frequently cited by the Rolling Stone as one of the worst, if not the worst, band names ever. But I personally loved it. Um, and so there was sort of this like expectation to beat it, and it was basically like months and months and months, or I guess just like the three, but it was just the 3 months of me trying desperately to come up with a band name that they liked. And so in this group chat, I'd be like, "Is this our band name?" And they would just go, "No." Uh, and no matter how hard I tried, they would just be like, "No, not good." Because what I didn't realize is they were very over having a name like that. Um,
Well, okay, so just out of curiosity, like, can you remember, like, maybe some of the other names that you pitched to them that they were just not having?
So yeah, the first name we had was the Congressman, but we decided that that was probably too like that's like a fun name, but it might lend itself either to too much of like a '60s surf sound or like a political edge. And
Mm-hmm.
not that like we don't, I don't know, not that like I'm averse to having politics in our music, but like it definitely wasn't something that seemed appropriate for like what we originally were. And then I remember we wanted to be the Seratones, like as in serotonin, and then I'm glad we didn't, because now there's a really incredible band called the Seratones that I think are a much more worthy cause of that name, um, or a much more worthy wielder of the name, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had a lot of really weird ones that like I don't super remember. For a while, I was basically like finding weird wordplay. I remember one that I really liked was Suicide Cult 45, and another one was Aberdeen Martin.
Suicide
Uh,
Cult 45. That's like really specific. I don't know if that's a reference to something or if it just kind of
which
grew
one?
again. Suicide Cult 45, is that a reference to something or?
Oh, so it was a portmanteau of Suicide Cult and Colt 45, which is like a beer, which I think that like at the time I was probably very into like I still liked the music, but I remember I had a very big folk punk phase, and
Okay.
I feel like that was a very folk punk name, which I feel like it is funny to think that like if we had a different name like that, just due to some weirdness, I just know that our music would be very different,
Okay.
and probably more acoustic driven. We'd gone with that name, but um,
So then how did you land on Scarves?
So this is true. There's a video game called Journey that I really like that I think is one of those beautiful like little quick stories ever. And essentially the plot of it is you are a tiny little person who's going on a quest, a journey as it were, through this weird mountainside. That's kind of surreal. And the cool thing about the game is there's no audio, or there's audio, but there's no like dialogue or anything. You just kind of go forward and solve like really simple puzzles. But
Okay.
about halfway through the game, you're placed with another person online who joins you. And the cool thing is you don't know their name, and all they can do is chirp. So to solve puzzles, you just chirp at each other. But if you beat a puzzle, your scarf grows a little bit. And your scarf is your meter for flying. So like how long your scarf is how long you're able to fly in one go.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know why. It was just like a really beautiful pattern of a scarf, and like I think there was just some mental exhaustion from like trying so desperately to get a band name that I googled Scarves band. Nothing came up. So I was like, "Hey guys, is this cool?" And they were like, "Yeah, it kind of sounds like cursive." And I'm like, "Oh, that's right, the band that we rip off." And someone who ended up kind of becoming a friend of the band later on. But I was like, "Yeah, that'll work." And so we just felt like it sort of inherently had a place in the sort of like emo punk world that we were starting to enter into, and it like let us fit very comfortably where we were already sort of landing. And yeah, we ended up going with that.
Awesome. Okay, so the fact that, okay, you're paired with someone midway through the game, and it's like the two of you on this journey, it just feels like really reminiscent of like a lot of the stories that are told in the album Empty Houses as well as Mall Goths. So just kind of looking at the body of work, I know that the band membership has changed and evolved a lot over time. You've got the EPTV, you've got the album Empty Houses, which I mean I can just kind of geek out about all day. And then just like a handful of weeks ago, you all released the album Molgoths, which we'll specifically chat about maybe in just a bit, but I'm a little bit curious about your writing process. When we had the chance to chat about Empty Houses previously, it sounded like it was written in this kind of fashion where you laid down the instrumental groundwork and then you kind of go off on your own, Niko, and just kind of sprout the lyrics from there. Like I remember you telling me that you were running around the lake up in Bellingham coming up with lyrics. Is that just kind of your typical process, or does it differ at all time to time?
Yeah, it's funny hearing the process recited back to me because it almost makes me feel like some sort of like weird meditative monk or something that's like I must go meditate on this, like I must sit under a tree or something. I don't know. But yeah, I guess it's pretty fair. Like I feel up until this point in time, anyway, I feel like what we're going on now is a little different. But I think that's a personnel related issue. Not issue, but like I think more it's more opportune for me. I think the way it's going. But back then, basically, yeah, we would write a song, and then I basically come to practice with an instrumental or two, and then what always happens is you're like, hey, check out this riff, and they're like, cool, check out the drum part. And you're like, wow, my riff isn't my riff anymore, and then it kind of mutates into this, big instrumental that's a bit more realized, a bit more full. And what's cool is you start to be able to tell, like, oh, this part of the instrumental is clearly going to become a verse, and this one's going to become a chorus. And then sort of with that landscape that you sort of build, you're able, at least I'm able to kind of listen to it back, maybe on an iPhone recording, maybe just kind of in memory or just being able to like sample the riff a little bit to myself. And then I just kind of like, I guess, meditate on it. And I'm just like, all right, well, what did this evoke for me? Like, what's going on? And a lot of times I'll have like a journal or something that has typically my phone, my notes app. I use that a lot. I got like hundreds and hundreds of documents on it. But
Ooh,
I'll have just
okay.
ideas for notes, or I'll have ideas for songs or little nodes that you can start to string together. And usually it's just sort of about like who I'm thinking about, what I'm thinking about at the time, and basically getting the groundwork for a story. And it's easy to come up with a story for me, but like getting the poetics in there and making sure that the lyrics aren't just me telling a story, but actually have some sort of artistic merit to them. That's usually where the challenge comes in. That's
Interesting.
usually when I'm running around the lake being like, cool, but how do I say that in a prettier way?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or in a way that doesn't just sound like I'm saying the thing, which is, I don't know. I could probably go deeper in that, but yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, like all that being said, I know that It was Western Washington that you went to for school, right?
Yes.
And
WW.
yeah, WW.
Go
No,
Vikings or something. Unless they
something
changed it
along
already.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that you studied creative writing. I'm a little bit curious to know, as much as you want to share here, like how much influence from that formal education kind of seeps into your songwriting.
Um, quite a bit. Mostly because I got to study poetry under a guy named Bruce Beasley, who I think is a really really incredible poet. He's got a couple books that I can't remember the name. I know one's called Corpse Flower. And he has a really interesting poetry style. Like he's an old dude from Georgia who, like, he's just great. He's just got this really unique, like, old school Southern, like, well, let me tell you, sort of style of teaching. But he's also just this nerd who, like, was a little boy in Macon, Georgia, who read his first poem one day and become obsessed with poetry, and he loved it. And like, he was the first teacher, maybe in my life. I've liked a lot of my teachers. I'm not like one of those dudes who like hated. I hated high school, but like, but he's one of those dudes who like when he talked about something, how excited he was about it made you so excited. And I just really gotten into songwriting. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I took his class about halfway through writing Empty Houses. Actually, this is funny. Empty Houses became a final project for that class, essentially. Like, because I submitted it as my final. Um,
Whoa, I had no idea.
yeah, I mean, I it was kind of cheating because like it was very much already almost done.
Okay.
So then that class really just forced me to like push it forward, and then it was just cool because I told him about it. And he's like, "Yeah, that can be your final." Um, but uh, yeah, but he basically like taught me a lot of mechanics of language that I never thought of, like just how individual words operate. And if you think of like syllables more as I don't know, like things that seem simple, where like, but if you think of like the particular harshness or softness of a syllable, how they can be strung together, and I think that like early songs I write have sort of like cheeky, like I don't understand how poetry works, like rhyme schemes and funny things, and then later on, I think particularly more in Goths, you start seeing more, maybe not. I've never really been good at the poetics, but at least more like honest attempts to like replicate certain things
Okay.
and like that is something that Bruce Beasley really hammered into me. And I think just like also anyone who gets an education like that, um, something you're taught is just sort of like not necessarily reverence for it, but like writing, but more like just how to be more open minded about your own writing and like how to be more critical about it and like what voices to really implement. Like I know that when I'm writing something, if I don't necessarily like it, I kind of imagine some of the workshop groups I was in and certain individuals and like what they would say about it. And then it becomes almost like tarot card readings where you're just like becoming
Mm-hmm.
really introspective about each individual element of your writing, in a way that I think even if like the styles aren't rooted from there, just how you're able to edit and analyze it really strongly is augmented by that education, at least for me.
Yeah, it's interesting, like, when you take that more workshop perspective on it, that kind of reminds me about how, I learned Spanish and now like when I'm out and about, it's impossible to unhear or to not understand what's being said, even if you want to wash it out and not eavesdrop. Like you don't have that option anymore because now you know the language. It's like, now that you know creative writing from like maybe that more education or workshop background, like it's kind of something that sticks with you that maybe you can't kind of shed of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's really interesting to like listen to music and like kind of identify poetic forms that are flowing through it that aren't like the obvious ones. Can you hear me still?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Sorry, the phone got real quiet. I'm like, well, the connection's really great or died. Um, but so I think one of the more to me like examples that I thought was really interesting is one of my favorite bands of all time, if not my favorite band of all time, is the Weaker Thens. And
Is the what? Sorry.
the Weaker Thens,
The Weaker Thens.
like
Okay.
Weaker Thans, and they've got a record called Reconstruction Site that I think is probably the best record ever made. Like hands down for me, I think that it's just constructed in so many really beautiful and interesting ways, and like he's like in the style where I tell stories. I'm really just trying to be him, where I think he's just so good. But one thing that I thought was really cool is after taking these classes, I was able to go back and re-listen to the record and be like, oh my god, the first, middle, and end song are sonnets. And how interesting it was to hear these like classical poetic forms being used in pop music in ways that are really subtle, but at the same time, like give the songs a very distinct flow and flavor that you don't really hear in traditional, in like a lot of like more mainstream music.
Mm-hmm.
But it's cool because even like once in a while it'll be on the radio and you're like, whoa, whether or not it was intentional, like that song's kind of a parallel, or like that song's sort of like a different poetic form, or even just like that song uses the way that the vowels move from word to word is really fascinating, or like that's a really subtle way to do a slant rhyme. You start to pick it up, and I think that it's something that I think I have got sort of a non-traditional writing sense in the sense that I have a hard time with like the way my voice works. If I do a rhyme, it is so obvious
Okay.
that I have to kind of do slant rhymes a lot of the time, which are rhymes that are like, the classical like hinge and orange, where it's technically not a perfect rhyme, but it works, and it's sort of one of those things that like it kind of liberated me to feel like that was an okay thing to do and that I wasn't failing. It was just like modular, it was like modifying the art form to fit my personal style more.
Okay, cool. And it's okay. So what you just said about songs, it's like if you look at an entire album that might be like 10 or 12 songs, and you just kind of start seeing them in pairs, or one song relates back to another. Definitely saw that in Mall Goths. And it's interesting that you bring that up because that was an observation that I had, which, yeah, it just kind of flows perfectly. Um, Speaking to your lyrics here specifically, I mean, like that could be standalone poetry or storytelling if you really wanted it to be, without the accompaniment of music. And I think that the music alone stands really well too. Both pieces separately really enjoyable. But all that being said, just like the heaviness of the lyrics, I know that you wrote somewhere that lyrics suddenly became really important to you. Are there any plans of releasing the transcripted lyrics?
So actually, as of now, all the lyrics are available on Bandcamp. So if you go to our
Really?
Bandcamp, all of the songs, there's a lyric button. I don't know if you have to purchase it. I don't think so. And if there's a way to make it free, I would. But yeah, so all of the lyrics are included in the book, or in the
On
all the
Bandcamp.
lyrics are yeah, they're on the Bandcamp website. They aren't up there for Empty Houses because honestly, I just haven't had time to go back and
Okay.
do it.
Okay.
Uh, but so there was always talk of including a lyric book in Molgoth. The unfortunate thing is, it's just like we weren't able. We sort of had soft offers from pretty big labels, and we were really excited about it. And then all of them kind of predictably fell through, just because like we're not a band that is developed enough really to be worth, I think, a lot of expense. Like not like I don't know, not that like it's not something that like would be I think personally worth investing, but I think that I am very aware that financially it would probably be a loss to invest in us. Or then I think anyway, that's getting down a weird tangent. Um, uh, but yeah, we just weren't able to financially get it together to make enough to make like lyric books for the new record. So I
Okay.
made them available for free online.
Yeah, I mean, like, just the accessibility is awesome. Okay, so Molgoth lyrics up on Bandcamp. Maybe eventually for Empty Houses when you find the time to.
Yeah, maybe I'll go do that tonight or something. I don't know.
Sweet. All
But
right.
I just don't like remember the words too well. We haven't played a lot of the songs off Empty House in like over a year. Uh, so it'll be interesting to see if I can remember them. Or maybe I'll just put up what I think they are.
What
That'd be
you
fun.
think they are. That's hilarious. Okay.
Actually, on that note, if you go online for several of the songs, other people have posted them to lyric sites. And they're all very wrong. And I
Yeah.
love that. And I refuse to change it. Because there's so many websites that have lyrics to either Tag or Icarus or other songs off that record, and they are just wildly wrong. One of them, even halfway through, just admits they don't know what the words are. And I love that. I just like can't tell you how great that is to me.
Well, I mean, just like as a listener and as a fan, right? Like, just like one word off or being incorrect, and like learning what the actual thing is, it's gonna like totally change the interpretation and like the tone of like how we listen to it, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of cool though to see that people have made that attempt, um, and that it's up online. Yeah, I think I'm kind of curious now to maybe see what other people hear versus what I hear. Um, But yeah, why don't we go ahead and just like dive into Molgoths here? I mean, like I could sit and dissect those lyrics over a nice cup of coffee, like over an extended period of time. I mean, that's something that I have done, just kind of in preps for this conversation too. But maybe just in the interest of allowing folks
I
to.
like how you're sort of warning me. You're like, by the way, I know.
I
Like,
know
I know what
what.
these words are.
BT
I mean, maybe I should
dibs.
just sit here. Like, I don't know. Should I just sit here and just affirm your paradigm? I don't want to like ruin anything and be like, oh, I thought that song was pretty cool. Now that you told me about it, I don't
No,
know.
I'm like, I don't know, Niko. Like, I'm always like gonna be a truth seeker, even
Right.
if it doesn't taste good. Like, I'd rather know the truth. So,
See, I respect that.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, like with these words to Malgoth, I mean, like, I have my own interpretation of each song, like how they kind of like stitch and marry together. Just I don't know if we can talk about themes a bit. Just the overarching ones for me are just kind of like surface level appearances versus like the deeper truths and like regarding truth, just kind of conceding to that truth. I mean, you've got lyrics and they're like, okay, okay, I'll admit, so yeah, I get it, just kind of like conceding to that. And even it goes into the listening process too. I forget which publication it was, but they said that upon the first listen, the songs feel like really upbeat and energetic. And then, like, once they went around for a second listen, they start to really listen to the lyrics and then they're hit with that truth and that kind of darkness. Um, I know that you have that, that the whole album is about like characters along the I-5 corridor, but just kind of like my interpretation versus maybe what you had intended. I'm kind of curious to know more.
So, first things first, I gotta give a shout out to the guy who wrote that because that became kind of a press code for a while. His name's also, I believe it's Elijah. I haven't met him yet, but he runs a or he's the music director at a radio station in Colorado, and that dude hooked us up on this tour. That like he just one of the like truest people I've talked to in the music scene, and someone who's just super great and like such a great music fan and so dedicated to like music and art form, and love that guy. But to your question, uh, yeah, I guess it's almost interesting to hear that your perspective on it, only because I find the record to be kind of disjointed, in the sense that like I don't know if I could play a card right now that might reveal too much behind the record, but like the characters are all mostly me. And like I know that's like probably not a big shock, but like unlike Empty Houses where I'm none of the characters, like things kind of happen to me. Malgoths is pretty autobiographical or autobiographical in a lot of
Okay.
ways that um like and they're kind of like different like characters of my personality being split into different ways, and like a lot of the times the character they're engaging with is uh a more me personified version of someone I really care about or cared about in a couple instances. um yeah, I guess like man, can you repeat the like specifics of this question a bit? Because I think I'm about to like go back into my own little like weird brain world and
Which
not.
is which is totally welcome because I mean like I didn't really pose a question. It was just like here are my thoughts. I mean like if you want to just kind of like yeah, let's go for a swim in that pool if you want to go there.
Wait, which pool? Sorry.
The pool is
Okay, well this is totally going off the rails. On my fault though, completely. I
No, it's not.
I got
No.
ADD, so I tend to derail trains.
No, I mean like I love tangents, right? So if we want to get lost just kind of in your brain right now, I mean totally open to that.
So okay, I'll just say that like the record to me is a really like pretty personal take on two really wild years of my life, in the sense that like I went through my biggest life changes ever
Mhm.
during that time period, where like I graduated college, but I was also like during that time period obviously attending college, and like the band had gone from it just took on so many different forms, and like it became this thing that like I was doing kind of for fun and kind of because I wanted to, and then it became this like weird thing I felt really obligated, not obligated, like it felt like it became like my charge or my duty in a way, and like suddenly I started having more and more people who kind of relied on the band. It was like something. like eventually like the people who are on Goths right now like really care about the project. And it went from like a band that like I felt like I was the only member of that cared about to like I felt really obligated to like really try to make it the best it could be, and sort of just like the pressures of that, plus like the songs are kind of about like obviously like there was a pretty big breakup that happened at that time period. And also like I got together with someone that I really love, and like all of these life events kind of coagulated to this weird I guess just story that's like not really linear, but it was kind of the point of it was just like sort of how my brain works right now is sort of just me meandering across the I-5, where I'd be like I'd have obligations in Seattle or Portland or Bellingham, and like all the different kind of characters that became the reasons why I was going to those places, like sort of an exploration of like why am I in this city now.
Got it. Okay. So just like kind of your different identities that you have like in any given location.
Yeah, and sort of just like there was sort of a theme on the record of like who are we becoming, where have we been, which is I think something that's really always interested me, is like people aren't a static personality even like from day to day, and like so many of the characters in it were something or are something or are fleeing from something that they probably were, more or less. So to me it's sort of a record about the original concept for it that only like has shadows of it, I guess. Now was originally it was supposed to be like two kids who were in a play that was not a good play, and they
Okay.
totally knew, because I always get fascinated by actors essentially getting trapped, where like a really great actor can work their whole life, then go on to like a huge debut play, and the play can get critically panned for like its writing and everything. It's the first time, but the actor's then committed to it for like 2 months,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then eventually, as that concept failed, it kind of became a lot more literal.
Okay. Well, I don't know. It's interesting to hear just kind of like the original concept for it, because I mean, like in real life too. You know, I've seen that. Like I'm a friend of the theater world, and yeah, you just have to stay committed to the project, which is interesting because you abandoned that one. But that's another tangent that we could go on.
See, that's the thing, is like the trick is you don't declare it until it's done.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
learned to like kind of keep some cards close to the chest, which is bad because I'm terrible at it. But you know, because I just did too. Once again, I failed at my own thesis as I presented it.
I'm also curious to know, like, just in conversation, I think we were over at Chop Suey, and I was just kind of raving about Aimless to you, and you're like, it's interesting because that song almost got cut from Empty Houses. Were any songs on Goths in that similar jeopardy, or like, were you pretty dedicated and pretty good with each one?
So there were two.
Ooh,
And once again, because you've expressed to me that you like this song, I do think it's funny where
trash
tastes
bags.
lie. Definitely trash bags. Uh, well, so okay, it's not so much that people didn't like the songs; it was more that they weren't coming together in the way that we kind of wanted them to. In the sense that like Trash Bags is a really disjointed track. Like it was very intentionally a lot of parts that are moving in very different directions. It's very much like the definition of angular guitar rock. Um, and I think that there were just a lot of issues where like, how do we sync this up? Does this work? Is this sounding good? Are my vocals working over this right now? Like it just was so many variables that it kind of just never really came together until it just did. And I still have my issues with it that like I think are going to be inherent in anything you put a lot of time into. Like any song that's a trouble song in studio is always going to be a trouble song to you, even if it's like the best song on the record. I know this phenomenon that like plenty of bands experience with like their big hit, where they're like that song was super hard to make, so there's some anxiety that's always driven to it. And then
Mm-hmm.
Slasher Flicks was the other one, purely for the same reason, which was like I really liked the song. I think everyone liked the song, but um, it just was so hard to get it to not sound empty or too cacophonous. Where like we knew that if the song was going to be on the record, it had to be the first song on the record, just because the nature of how it starts, the like screaming and like the guitar riff and everything. It was an opener. It couldn't be middle. It couldn't be end. Um, and so it was like, how do we make that song's gravity because we knew it's going to turn a lot of people off right off the bat because it's a very weird thing, and that's a strategy that bands like Bright Eyes employed. But it's like, how do we stand confidently behind it? Because like, if you're going to make that decision, you have to be like, I stand behind this. I 100% think this is the right move. And honestly, like, Slasher Flicks was a song that like we all really liked and really wanted to be on the record, but like, just once again, because it was so many moving parts and like it was so many weird sounds. Like a lot of those sounds on the record are like just guitars that are like being like thrown from room to room, or like pedals that were like just going crazy on and trying to like balance. And it's like, how did we make it? And it's really all to Dylan Wall, our producer's credit on that song, where it's like we presented him basically like, all right, so how this noise breakdown is going to work is like we're going to oscillate, and we want it to sound really wild, but we also don't want it to be, you know, terrible. So it was like finding this balance between this huge noise wash and also like a pop song.
Okay.
And I think that it was seriously just like Dylan kind of towards the end begrudgingly just hammering away at the song. And he was definitely very like, I don't know if this song's worth it, you know? And then at the end of it, he's like, yeah, the song can go first. And I think that was a cool progression where everyone went from like, we don't like this song to, yeah, we like the song enough to put it first.
Okay,
But
so
it was very almost a single.
okay, yeah, because like I'm just like on this end of the phone, like completely geeking out because Slasher Flicks, I mean, just I was gonna comment like anyway, that it's just such a great first song to the album. You know, I just think it sets the tone for the like entire story there. And just like kind of like in it, like the lyrics, like if we're gonna like talk about just like a words lyric standpoint, just like you talk about like in the first act this happens, second act, third act. The third act I think is like when you're on like the operating table, right, kind of like being put back together, and then like when you're listening to Marilyn Manson like later down, um it like kind of has like that kind of how do I articulate this? Like sort of like that
Holy crap.
surgical
It never occurred
operation.
to me that those songs at all, they were so written separate that I had no idea until you just said that they both involve surgery. So
Sweet. And then
I had never thought of that again. Like, I seriously had never thought of that.
okay, yeah, it's just like because from a listener's point of
Well,
view, like
because the trash bags also has disemboweling. This record's got a lot of
yeah,
disemboweling.
yeah, yeah, and like it just had like in trash bag specifically, like the imagery of like the crows, just kind of like for me, like I just imagine like these two crows pecking at the trash bag, like if the trash bag is like that superficial kind of like pretty sugar coated reality we try to live in, and then the trash is like that deeper truth. Like in my head, like these beaks are just poking into the trash bag, like trying to expose and intrude, and so I don't know, what seems very intentional, maybe from a listener's point of view, like might not be like from the creator's standpoint. So that's fun. That's fun.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. I mean, I think it's funny because like the themes were definitely like those themes. Like, I won't like I'm not going to comment too much on them just because like I don't want to be like definitely or no.
Like
I think
influence
that there's a
it.
lot of
Yeah.
truth that like the themes were very similar, but the actual imagery being like that close, I think, was something I didn't think about because Marilyn Manson is very much like a lot of the songs weirdly were written in very not I guess not weird because they're on the same record, but like they're kind of written in like very similar word soups where like the ideas and images kind of like were together and then maybe broken off into individual songs. But Marilyn Manson's very obviously about the fabled rumor about Marilyn Manson. Uh, and actually, it had a sister song called Kurt Cobain that became intermission. Or interlude, I think is what we ended up calling it on the record.
Interlude, yeah.
Yeah, and it was originally, basically, it was going to be about where Molgoths really came from, the title before it was the title of that song, it was sort of a reference to like the weird idols you have when you're younger and like the weird things you kind of idolize about them, and like how you see yourself and how weird those images kind of are with you, and like when you get older, like just kind of that looking back and trying to like romanticize why, but also being like kind of honestly confused at yourself. And the so Kurt Cobain, that song, the lyrics just would never fit. It has lyrics that are very much in the same vein of like the folklore behind the hero, but sort of relating back to like why that folklore is so attractive. Where like if you think about Marilyn Manson getting his ribs removed, there's sort of this sense of like, I guess we'll just say self-love involved. That was I think a really interesting thing to compare to Kurt Cobain's like self-hatred. And so it was supposed to be sort of this like parallel between the two icons and sort of how they. I think a lot of people think of Marilyn Manson as like a scarier, more evil creature, but in a lot of ways, like what he stood for was sort of like being yourself. In a lot of ways, like what Kurt Cobain stood for, while it was like empowering, it was also very much like steeped in this like deep self-loathing and self-hatred. And I think a lot of his lyrics kind of attracted where like a lot of the like grunge kids or 90s like emo kids were very like, yeah, I am awful, where Marilyn Manson's like, you're great, but how like the public image of those two characters is almost flipped. And it was sort of exploring that. And like, you know, it's like little crows poking through a trash bag. And that was kind of the intention there. But it's funny hearing that song brought up next to slasher flicks, because that's something I just never thought of.
Yeah, and like it just kind of like along the same vein of like the surgical like operation table imagery. I mean, like you have a couple really awesome music videos for songs on this album. Number one, Passengers, and then we'll talk a little bit about Off Script if you're cool with that. But like with Passengers specifically, I know that was done by Benjamin Violet, who was a former member of Scarves, right?
Yes. Before that, I was a member of his band, Friends and Family.
Okay.
So he's one of my closest and best friends.
All right. I mean, that's awesome. Like, maybe I'm overly romanticizing this, but I just think that's like a little bit more precious too. Like, when you have someone who used to be in the band creating a music video for it, and there's a little bit of, I don't really know if you can call it surgical imagery, but like when the nun character figure is kind of taking the guts out of like the little garlic.
A little like, yeah, I thought they were figs, but
fig,
I don't
garlic.
know. I don't know. That video is, yeah,
It's
that video is a lot. I like it, but
it's so good. And then so like there's that imagery too, right? Of like kind of like the guts being taken out, and then like what I interpret to be like the blood, and just like how like we are whole, but then like there are like individual pieces or aspects to ourselves that like we can either hide or shine, but it's kind of hard to be all of us at one time. Like I know that he spoke to the video itself. I think it was Impose magazine. They did a really great write up on it.
Yeah, they did that huge feature on it. That was cool. Yeah. So is your question like about? So you just wanted to like kind of know like my thoughts on the video, or like with, because essentially like I feel like me and Benjamin are sometimes two heads of a very similar creature, but with two very very different ways of like spewing what we're talking about. I think Benjamin is more of an oracle in a lot of ways, where I'm more of just like a bard, where like I'll tell a story and it'll be cheeky and silly and there'll be metaphors within the story, but it's usually grounded in maybe a fantastical reality, but nonetheless reality. But if you go back and look at anything Benjamin's ever written, it's really beautiful and poetic, and really, still has like a really harsh edge to it that's really silly. But a lot of the times we're talking about really similar themes, and like I think what we've always worked well together, and why he's doing this huge tour banner for us right now, and he's doing our T-shirts for the tour. I think what he's really good at is he can take something like me, he can take me and my like weird thoughts and like my kind of funny stories and turn them into really beautiful allegories. Which I don't totally understand all the time. Like I don't like I get why he'd be like breakup song, Space Nuns, and I kind of understand just because I've known him for so long how that transition works. It's sort of that like circle of life. Relationships are part of the life cycle thing. But then he just, I think, just has this really beautiful way of interpreting things, and I think it's just he has a record that he's got one for a band called Andy, which is really, really beautiful, but it's more of a narrative. But his first record that I got to play on it was called, I think it's like Young, Happy. It's like, oh, geez, I'm gonna script the name. It's in a band called Friends and Family, and the record's called like Young, Happy, and Rich or something. And
Okay.
it's and some of the lyrics on that record always just blow me away because they're so mystical and weird, but they're kind of just about. I mean, and even when they're like about bigger things, like society as a whole, they kind of relate to him as an individual in a way that I think that like maybe he won't admit to, and maybe I'm putting too many words in his mouth, but like it strikes me as so personal even when it's big. And like I have to say I a lot in my song. I say I said, you said. And he just says like the great serpent and chance, like obviously not that ridiculous, but like there's a lot of aliens on that record. And I think the aliens are really beautiful characters.
Friends and family. Yeah, I'll definitely have to look into that then. I was super excited about that and just kept going down that road. Also wanted to touch a little bit on Off Script and the music video for that, which features folks from Lucha Libre Volcanica. Um,
Yeah.
and they are local to Seattle. People should check them out. And this is really just commentary that I have. It's not really question format, but whatever you're willing to add or subtract to it. So like when you listen to the lyrics of Off Script and just it kind of hits you right with it's Mexican wrestling masks, is it? I think is what they're called, or I might be wrong. But
Oh yeah, the lucha masks, the
yeah, lucha masks.
mascaras.
Yeah, and just like
Mascaras, yeah.
hiding one's identity. That was like I think an obvious thing to me. But then maybe something a little bit more subtle, or like something that made me or rather something that kind of stood out to me a second time around was just the choreography aspect um, of the wrestling and just kind of how it relates to the choreographed interactions between people in everyday life and how we're kind of like doing this weird dance with each other, trying to do things appropriately, trying to do things that are maybe socially correct or socially acceptable, and not really like exposing our real selves or expressing our real selves. So that's all I have to say, and you can just kind of like run with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And I think something that like we thought was really interesting, and this is maybe a subtle thing for us, is we're in costume in that video. We don't wear that stuff live, and we kind of thought like we wanted to be very drab and black and white because in some ways we were like trying to do like a weird, I guess like ego id, two sides of the same personality. Where like the videos to me always been sort of like two halves of a brain, where the one is still like trying to get out of what they're doing, but they're still pretty restrained, and they're in this like black and white drab sort of scenario. And they're all like limited by their instruments and they're very encumbered. Where the other side is like these wrestlers who are masked and theoretically more clad in like disguises, but at the same time they're very bright and they're colorful and they're super energetic and they're having a
Yeah.
great time. And
Okay.
I think you can see them joking with each other a lot in the video, which I thought was really important to show because for like those wrestlers, there's no costume involved. Like I know those they're friends of mine, and they're very much their wrestling personas, and like it is their life, and it is so important to them. And I think that's really cool because I think that like maybe it's RuPaul who has it, but it's like you're born wearing drag or you're born naked. Everything after that's drag. That was sort
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
the idea that like we're kind of in the stuffy situation. I got my show boots on, but other than that, we're kind of restrained compared to just how free they are. But they're also in a cage. And the whole video is just like comparing freedoms, I guess, and like identities. And I don't know. It took forever. I think Benjamin was really Benjamin Owens, who did that video, who's another really good friend of mine from college, worked on that video, and he did our video for Tag. I think he was like really critical of himself during that time period where he like really wanted to make everything perfect and like it was the most we've worked on projects together. It was definitely the most like conversations we've had about the project during it, and it took the longest just because like he hit a level of professionalism with it that like really pushed me to hit a level of professionalism with it. And like I think by the end of it, not that we were like fighting, but I think we were both having like really intense dialogues about like what each individual like motion had to be in the video, which was cool because that's so not a level of professionalism that anything involved with Scarves ever hits. Because we sort of like to have that free nature, and I think it yielded a really cool result. I mean, it's in a film festival this weekend in Bellingham, and it got best in show.
Nice. Congratulations. Yeah, I did see that on the Facebook page, like maybe just like half an hour before we got on the phone. So, I mean, that's really exciting. And it's a beautiful video. The contrast between, colors versus black and white, being free, even though like you're in the ring, like being free there versus kind of like confined to your instruments. I mean, that didn't stand out to me before, so that's awesome to have that backstory and context. Um, you got a tour coming up.
Yeah, we do. We're going to Chicago.
And you've got a day trier session baked in there. Just day trier. I really love the. I think it's like the portrait art that they do
Oh yeah, the
on
little
the YouTube
watercolors.
videos. Yeah, yeah. So looking forward to hopefully being able to get access to that. But regarding tour, do you have any plans on how you're going to be using up that road time?
Yeah, so we we're working on something. I don't know if I'll go too deep into it, but
Okay.
we're working on something kind of big that we're really excited about. Um, we're working with people that I'm really excited about working with, and so a lot of the tour time is going to be dedicated to that and listening to podcasts. We've decided we were going to. Everyone in the band individually likes podcasts. We're gonna like, oh, we've got so much time to just listen and hang out and talk, and like also it'll be a good time to like we're all so busy. It's gonna be nice to like touch base with everyone and really get like a good grasp on what's going on.
All right, nice. So, like a little bit of consumption, a little bit of creation. Um,
Yeah.
is there anything that you all do to prep for your live shows, especially like when you have a string of them like this?
Oh, you mean like just like rituals and stuff?
Yeah, rituals, something that you might do
Uh,
right before.
So for about 30 to 35 minutes before a show, I usually like to do vocal warm ups and stuff. Just like simple, like little ones. And then we kind of like, I tend to isolate myself more. Like I feel bad because usually like a lot of our people come to our shows are friends at this point. So like it's, I try not to like be mean and block people out, but I kind of feel like I need space.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just kind of usually sit there with my band and like, we just kind of like do awkward small talk, but kind of get into the zone a little bit. Um, and then I don't know. I usually we before every show, it's really dorky, and I'm sure this is super cliche for bands to do, but we always do the chant from Cool Runnings that they do before they go down a slide.
Oh,
So
remind me.
it's the one that's like feel the rhythm, feel the ride, get on up, it's bobsled time. Cool Runnings. Yeah, we do that before every show. No matter how cool we might seem on stage, we do the Cool Runnings chant right before we're on there. I used to have silver boots I'd put on right before the show, but they got destroyed because they're very cheap and I jump a lot.
Oh man, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
they died.
Did
I'm
you?
looking for a suitable replacement pair, but it's hard because I don't want to buy another cheap one. But anyway, silver boots are
Yeah.
expensive if you're not buying the cheapest one.
No, I know, right? So like, did you keep them or did you toss them?
I have them. Like I don't know. They might have been tossed. They're in my mom's house,
Oh,
so
okay.
I don't know what she decides is worthwhile.
So the fate of the boots is TBD then.
TBD.
All
Yeah, the
right.
boots. Like it's very much they're in the nether region or not nether region other world. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. It's something about Stranger Things, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, another house is like its own little microcosm too. Which okay, another tangent here, but really quick, I was interested to know, like, when you're attending a show, like as an audience member, do you have like a preference on where you're standing or like what your vantage point is? Like, are you closer to the stage, further back of house to kind of soak it all in?
It depends the show. Like I feel like I like I used to be like the guy who would get there 7 hours early, be in front row, uh, all the time. Like that was my thing. I was before I was a musician, I was like the big music fan in school where like I was the kid who would like skip school to get to a concert early so I could wait in line, like, and like I was just I mean, I think that when I was like 13 through 17, maybe 18, I probably attended 700 shows or something.
Oh.
I was there. And like, it's funny, like, if you go to KFC's website and you go back long enough, you'll start seeing me in like every photo and every crowd shot because I was front and center. And I ended up becoming really good friends with one of the photographers, Jim Bennett, who started taking pictures of me at every show just because he was like, holy crap, you go to everything. And I'm like, I know, right? Um, but I was the dude who like I wanted to see everyone live. I wanted to be close. I wanted to like get to meet them. Like I got to meet so many bands because I was a kid who would wait for hours afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it changed a little bit when I got into music, just because like I don't know if it was appearances, but also just like I feel like I could start to feel their exhaustion because like playing a show can be really wild, especially when you see someone that you like love and they play for 3 hours. You're like, yeah, I bet that person's tired. I'm gonna go home. Which isn't to say that that's like something you should do. I think a lot of bands probably actually really like that. I think it's just that I got like sympathy pains, so I
Got
was
it.
tired, so I wanted to go home. But these days, if it's like a band that I'm checking out or that I like, I usually like to be middle of the crowd, and I usually now like to let the younger me's who have that same energy and drive go up there and hopefully be inspired to eventually be a middle of the crowd, tired old man, or anyone. Um, but yeah, I know that like I've learned that being by the sound person is always a really good choice because like they're mixing the show, so I'm sure the sound's gonna be pretty good where they're at. And always interested in how bands operate on stage now. Like I'm very analytical of like, oh, they're doing that because of this. And, if we were ever a 6-piece band, that's where I would stand, or like that's why I would have a synthesizer. Uh, I guess it's just like wherever I can pretend to be the band most and get and study. Like that's a hard thing. We talked about this earlier. It's hard to like go to a show and not study it. Like I think that the first time in a while I was able to not do that is I got my girlfriend gave me tickets to see The Cure with her this summer,
Whoa, nice.
and that was the most like it was a cool thing where she got me like cheap seats, and then over there she's like, just so you know, here's the actual seats, so you're like fourth row, and they're one of those bands to me. So like the whole set, I was like, I can't believe they're playing this, and like freaking out. And it was the first time in a while I got to be like a little kid again at a show, being like, that's actually Robert Smith. He's real.
And just
He's not
like,
just
yeah.
goth grandpa. He's actually still Robert Smith.
And just geek out without being analytical and like you just kind of like I mean I guess that's really easy to do, right? Like when you're in a smaller venue and you can like literally see everyone that's there like in relation to the space. But man, The Cure, that must have been an awesome time.
Yeah, it was. Oh, it was so good. Like I don't know, they played for 3 hours. They could have played for 7. I would have. Plus Robert is so funny, and like I feel like I incidentally learned just because like my whole life has been trying to be him. So like like seeing him live, I'm like, he's real. But it was also just like it's so hard to analyze it when you're being like melted by those just massive synths and like I don't know. He played so many songs. He didn't play Walk, which bummed me out, or Catch, because I really like that song. But there's no way he'll ever play Catch. But anyway, that's the thing.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I have to thank you for like just being really generous too with like sharing so much context and stories. Any last words, like on the album or on tour?
I would just say, people, if anyone hears it and is interested in stuff we're about to do, to follow our page because next October we're gonna have some pretty cool stuff we're gonna be sharing. I feel like that is very different and maybe not what people are expecting, but I think in a way that I'm really proud of.
Awesome. So next October, as in like this one of 2017, or like more than a year from now?
2017 is when things should start materializing. Maybe nothing, no new content, but a lot more context will be revealed.
Got
Uh,
it. Okay.
I'll just say I got an email from one of my heroes, and it might be changing some stuff.
All right. Well, I am excited for you all. I'm sure a lot of us are. So you've got the Facebook page, recently conceived Tumblr, as well as the
Oh
longstanding
yeah, my drummer
Bandcamp.
made that. That's
Yeah.
fun.
Kale, right? Is it Kale?
Kale, yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, so I just kind of like your full lineup live right now. It's you, got Kale on drums, and you got Hector, aka Hex, on bass.
Yeah, that's the lineup.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you so much, and just have an awesome tour, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Niko. Bye.
All right, bye.